This is a presentation that I gave during the 2010 MAMSI conference. MAMSI stands for the Michigan Association of Middle School Educators. And the topic was how online learning can help differentiate instruction within the confines of a traditional classroom setting. First, we want to look at how parents view opportunities for online versus traditional classroom learning. Oftentimes, in a traditional classroom, we'll find that most of the students are moving at about the same pace, and that's constrained by the pace that the teacher sets. That pace may be too fast for some, it may be too slow for others. The advanced learners in that class could probably be doing more. They're probably capable of doing more than the pace that's being set. Struggling learners may need more time with the material, and the class may be moving too fast for them. The teacher is available to help, but may be stretched thin. As opposed to an online class, from some parents' view, an online class offers students the ability to move at their own pace, offers a greater variety of content because students can choose the particular course that is the very most interesting and most relevant to them at that moment. It is true that not all kids are disciplined enough to learn independently, and that freedom that an online class allows may be difficult for some kids. And finally, there are typically teachers available to help in an online class setting, but they may not be right there when you need them. You may ask a question and then need to wait 24 hours to get a response. So parents are looking at the possibilities of enrolling their kids in online classes as opposed to traditional classroom settings, and this is a real possibility. So let's think about which parent would choose which of these options. Well, the online class is going to appeal more to parents who think their child is bored in a regular classroom. This often will include parents of very advanced students. It also would include parents of very independent and motivated learners. That is, the parents who think that their child will be motivated and independent enough to proceed through and succeed at an online learning class. In a traditional classroom, who does this leave then? Well, parents who know that their child needs a teacher guiding and reminding them to stay on task. Students who need close adult supervision on a regular basis, and students of parents who didn't investigate or push for an online class. So we can get a sense of which kinds of students would end up in which kinds of classrooms based on what parents would choose given these two options. So what does this mean for middle school Michigan teachers, or really for teachers in general? It means that the students who are the most motivated and disciplined and who have the most involved and supportive parents may self-track out of our classrooms. And there are companies out there, K12.com is one of the big ones, that are in fact aggressively looking to pull students out of the traditional public school classroom. They're seeking these students and parents and marketing heavily to them. These online classes that are being offered to these students, these motivated and disciplined students, can be taught by qualified individuals from anywhere in the country or really anywhere in the world. There's nothing in particular that anchors a teacher of an online class to a particular locality. So what can we as teachers do, and what does this have to do with online learning and differentiation? Well, let's think about a continuum rather than sort of having online classes and traditional learning as being an either or. If we really think about these as representing a continuum between a traditional classroom where everything is done on paper and pencil and the desks are in rows and the teacher is up front, versus an entirely online class where a student never goes to a physical building and the teacher may be a world away. There is a thing called blended learning, and blended learning mixes the best aspects of online learning and classroom learning. So it's taking some of the tools that online learning makes available and implementing them within a classroom setting. What this does, using these online tools within the classroom setting, can allow for differentiated and customized learning for students. Research supports doing this. So the Department of Education released a meta-analysis. That's where they do a review of many different studies that other researchers have done. And what they found was that students who were in online learning conditions did better than those receiving face-to-face instruction. So that's a real wake-up call for us as teachers. However, they also looked at studies that compared online and blended learning to face-to-face. So remember, blended learning is some aspects of online taking place within a face-to-face classroom. And what they found was that blended instruction has been more effective. So of the options, fully online, fully face-to-face, or blended, blended was what proved to be the most effective. And so this supports why we should spend the effort to design and implement these blended approaches. This is from the Summary of Research on the Effectiveness of Online Learning in 2009. So what can this blended learning look like? Again, if we think of a spectrum where we have a traditional classroom on one end and a fully online class on the other, there are different levels of blended learning. The simplest might be to add existing course materials to a class website. Maybe it's putting up a homework calendar. Maybe it's putting copies of worksheets available online. Even that little bit of incorporating technology can significantly help. At the far other end, we might have all of the content available online where a teacher is simply guiding, pacing, monitoring, assisting, and helping students move through it. In between those, we might have some interactive online activities that are incorporated into a traditional curriculum. Or we might have a lot of the content being available online with occasional classroom lessons for things that are difficult to do online. Like, for example, perhaps hands-on science labs would be done in a whole class traditional setting. So we can see that blended learning can take a variety of different forms and involve different levels of technology applications. All right, so how do we do the things on both ends? Well, if we look at I just want to add some stuff to my class website, or I want to make a class website, here are some tools that we can use. If you're a Mac user, the iWeb tool lets you create a website nice and easily. Weebly, Wix, and Google Sites are all freely available online. They have paid versions, but they also have free versions that you can design and publish websites quite easily. So things that you might do there is put up a homework calendar, put copies of work that's done in class online, put class notes available online. And how does this have anything to do with differentiation? Well, if you have students who are having difficulty in school because they're not physically present, whether it's because there are attendance issues related to family issues, whether it's because they're chronically ill, whatever it is, those students are able to stay on track and catch up more easily. If you have students who need help with organization, kids who come home having forgotten their worksheets or not knowing what to do, by putting some information online, you give them the ability to problem solve on their own. And so students aren't simply out of luck if they're disorganized. It also allows parents to better support and check in on their children. Parents are no longer in their position of having to take a kid's word for it when the kid says there was no homework assigned that day. At the other end of the spectrum, where we have most of our coursework available online with teachers present to guide, pace, and monitor, tools for this include Moodle, Blackboard, a system called My iCourse, which is similar to Moodle and Blackboard but is free. Often textbook publishers will offer this. And a newly available one that isn't mentioned here is called Edmodo, that allows you to create an online course environment. These are all tools for creating courses that could run fully online. So how does this help with differentiation? Well, students can work through the material at their own pace, be that faster or slower. Built-in assessments can monitor for mastery before students progress. So in our ideal world, if a student fails a chapter test in math, for example, they don't move on to the next chapter until they've gone back and relearned what they needed to. In an online course setting, this can happen automatically. Finally, students have the option of choosing different tasks or sequence of activities to accomplish the same end learning goal. And so this lets students whose primary mode of learning is different from others choose tasks that help them learn the best. So for example, you can do things like being in two places at once. And this is something that we've worked on in our class, where you can create a lesson on demand. We've learned that that helps students pause and rewind a lesson. Students can ask questions of a teacher in a relatively low-risk setting, because when everyone in the class has their headphones on and is listening to something, that one student who raises his or her hand and says, "I need help," isn't having to do so with the eyes of the other 29 kids in their class on them. The teacher is also free to have longer one-on-one interactions with individual students because he or she isn't busy up front talking to the whole class. This gives parents the ability to access a full lesson if they want to be helping their children, or if they're questioning what's being taught, they have access to see everything that the kids see. And it gives students a way to help prepare before an assessment. Some students will go back and rewatch these lessons the night before a test to remind them of things that they need. In this section, another cool thing that you can do is, I call it show, don't tell. So for example, if there's something that you want students to do on a computer, like design a website or make a spreadsheet, if you create a visual that shows the students where to click and what to do, this is a whole lot easier than trying to say those things out loud to a classroom full of 30 students who are sitting in front of computers. So for example, what's down below was made using a program called iShowU, which is simply a screen capture, and it allows students to listen to a teacher's instructions as they watch what's going on a computer screen. Another cool thing that you can do when you move more of your content online that allows for differentiation is to give kids more choice in activities and sequence. So what's shown here is just a little snippet of a Moodle class. So this is an online class. This happens to be for a middle school newspaper class. Students in the class have a choice of what type of article they want to be writing for the student newspaper. They can write a news article or a feature article. If they choose to write a news article, they'd work through all of those tasks that are shown in Module 11. So the students simply click on each of those tasks in blue. Each one is its own learning task and has students do some work, read some information, turn some things in. And by the time they get through to the end, they are prepared to write a news article. If instead the student wanted to write a feature article, they'd work through the learning tasks in Module 12. And those continue on down off the bottom of the screen. And so students have this option of choosing which activity works best for them, and all of the learning tasks are right there. Some other good things you can do when your content is online, you save a tremendous amount of time not pulling together materials for students who are out for a day because it's all available and they know what to do. When you allow kids and parents to access notes and documents on their own, this can be a particular help when you have students who have IEPs that require copies of class notes, which is, at least in my district, a fairly common accommodation for students with special needs. Those copies of notes are already available online, and that condition of an IEP is met before class even starts. Certainly, on days that you have a sub, it is both easier and more effective if all of the content is already online and the students are familiar with how to access it. Finally, some of these systems, like Moodle, like Blackboard, like some other classes, have built-in test setups so you can enter multiple choice questions where those will be graded automatically. You can see the data of how kids did. You can see how long kids took on a particular assessment to get a sense whether they did well because they took their time and really knew the stuff, or whether they rushed through. So you can get some more useful information from the assessments other than simply whether or not they knew the particular material.